All right.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the You Don't Look Like an Engineer podcast.
Welcome, everyone.
Today, we'll be introducing Steve, who is someone I met at my previous workplace, Arup. And honestly, just, getting, chatting, as we usually tend to do with everyone we're talking to. I just can't stress how incredible Steve's journey has been. And obviously, we'll talk about it more. But he is such an inspiration in terms of values and beliefs and what he does to make the workplace better for everyone. So without further ado, Steve, if you could let our audiences know a little bit about where you're from, what you do, and how you ended up where you are right now.
Cool. Thanks both for having me. Really excited. And I think one of the key things I'll start with is that I do look like an engineer. One of the things that I'm really trying to do is, pull people into the space that I work in that maybe don't look like a traditional engineer and sort of use that as a stepping stone for some other people. So I am a water business leader at Arup as my day job. So that generally involves being the sort of external facing and commercial lead when it comes to our water business, particularly in New South Wales and ACT for Arup. So that's across all of our sort of different clients and different projects, whether they're big projects or small projects or the pro bono stuff that we do potentially. And it also is, representing Arup in the water space externally. That involves being involved in a lot of things. So I've been doing that before I came to Arup, but I guess in this external facing role, I've sort of had some time to explore that and really narrow down on some of the things that I think I can sort of add value to within the industry and abroad. So, yeah.
That's pretty epic. I love how you said that you do look like an engineer. So now when we get asked what engineers look like, we can refer them to you.
Yeah.
You can be like, Steve looks like an engineer. He's the one.
Yep.
So
sized guy with glasses and a beard is usually what I think of an engineer. I actually said this today in a different meeting. We're going through as part of the shadow board that I sit on for Engineers Australia, we're reviewing some of their strategy. And one of the things that we talked about, the moonshot goal that we have, is that engineering is the most desirable career path. And we talked about how you get involved in engineering and how it's marketed and the personality types and things like that. And we talked about the difference between maybe how the medical field or the legal field is marketed. Like you have Suits, which is full of some really cool people doing stuff, and you have medical shows like House and all of that sort of stuff that isn't really about the medicine or the legal work. It's about the people and the stories. Yeah. And then on the flip side, you have engineering stuff that is predominantly about big buildings or bridges or things that went wrong or airplanes that crashed. It's about the thing. It's about the work that we did to either fix or not fix a problem. And we don't really focus on the people or the stories. And we talked about like, what does an engineer look like at that? And sort of the consensus was that every time an engineer is pictured in sort of popular media or things like that, it's usually an old white guy with a beard and glasses. And what can we do to sort of shift that perception, and that engineering isn't for the socially awkward that like doing weird things like taking washing machines apart as a kid or things like that. So
that's so
We're
interesting.
literally going to steal that and put that as our like intro for every like thing we talk about the podcast, because that was literally our mindset behind starting it. And it's so funny that you talked about the shows, because I used to joke with my old boss that we should write a show of like engineers like Suits and whatever, and we would always joke like, who would honestly watching someone clock in at 8 and clock out at 5 and just sit at their desk all day.
Using the power of spreadsheets to solve the world problem. Yeah, for sure.
That's true.
I do have to say, you have more hair than is traditionally pictured on an engineer. You know, it's always like someone bald with stress, just holding a calculator.
Yeah, but for the time being, I'll like to keep my hair. That would be good.
No,
sorry.
That's okay. I do want to ask you something, Steve, and just related to this topic. So Did you ever feel like you belong straight away you knew engineering was your field whenever you like started your professional career, as in like an office job? That's what I meant, sorry. Did you feel like you belong?
Really interestingly, I've gone through like patterns of feeling like I belong and not. So when I was really young, I happened to have a great careers advisor. Shout out to my mother, because I went to a rural school, and so ended up being in the same school as both my parents, who were teachers. I ended up spending a lot of time in the careers office. And back when I was younger, we used to have books that were like job guides that had all these things in them, and they don't exist anymore, which is showing my age. But it had all these jobs in it, like pretty much any job that you can think of, it's in there. And it could be a little sentence, it could be a long sentence. So it's like, here's some things that you might do, and here are the things that you might study to get there. And it was based on the university's centre stuff, so they all put it together, and it's great. I remember when I was probably like 15 maybe, and sitting down and reading that book and thought, I love mining. I come from an area near a mine, and I'm relatively good at maths and science, so therefore I probably want to be an engineer. So I looked up a mining engineer, and I thought, that sounds awful. I don't want to do any of that that's written there. It was stuff that was like about designing things and like being underground and whatever. And I was like, no, not for me. And at the bottom it said sea minerals process engineer. And I thought, okay, cool, I'll look up that one. And that was about being a chemical engineer or a process engineer in mining. And I was like, awesome, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. So I ended up doing work experience at the mine as a minerals process engineer when I was about 16 in year 10, and loved it. It was great. It was awesome. And then time went on. And then the end of that year, again, showing my age, we used to be able to leave after we'd done our exams, like about 3 months early, if we had employment. So I left, and I left school, and I started an apprenticeship as a Boilermaker, so someone who welds. And I thought that was going to be my career, and I wasn't going to be an engineer. I liked that stuff, but really I was like, great, I want to be using my hands to build things and do that. So there was definitely a point of time during that period of my life that I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be an engineer. It was really cool, but I'm probably not going to do that. And I guess sliding door moment, the employer that I was working with moved like several hundred kilometers away to a new town. And as a 16-year-old, you can't really afford to live out of home or travel several hundred kilometers every day. So I ended up going back to school after about 4 months, just shortly after the start of the year, and really thought, well, I better give this engineering thing a try, and did that, and did a bunch of very specific engineering courses in year 11 and 12. So like maths and physics and chemistry and engineering studies and things like that. And then got to uni, and it was awful. And again, that was another period of point that I was like, it's probably on the low side. Like I did reasonably well at my HSC, reasonable for my school and my town, I guess, not quite centre of Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane sort of 100 ATAR levels, but got into university, and I was pretty happy with what I'd been studying and what I was doing. And then I got into university, and I really didn't like it. And one of the reasons that now looking back is that engineering, particularly in your first year, but your first couple of years in chemical engineering is incredibly generic, because it needs to be. It covers so many different facets and industries and areas, like pretty much anything where something goes through a process to become something else has a chemical engineer involved, like water, like pharmaceuticals, like things you mine, like energy, like it's all of these things. So you end up learning tiny little bits from everywhere across all of these different industries. And I was sort of like, I don't really care about most of those. So it wasn't very, very like something that I was really enjoying. So I ended up going part-time. So I was like, I need this piece of paper. I want to go work in that mine again. I've experienced that and that was fun. So how do I lessen the impact on my life and still achieve the goal? So it's through that time as well that I thought, I'm probably not going to go into engineering. I'm probably going to get an engineering degree. I'm one of those people that go on to do something that isn't engineering, like might be adjacent, like project management or things like that. But I didn't think during that time that I was really an engineer or I belonged in the engineering like industry or profession.
I just want to say, I think firstly that question was so good, and I love your response as well, because a lot of I had the same experience. You know, when I joined engineering first year, end of uni, I did not think I was going to be a part of this industry. I was like, this is not for me. I cannot do it. I looked up everything I needed to get into physiotherapy, and I was like, I'm going to move. Come second year, but then in the second year, I guess I had my own little, I think it's a sliding door moment. I could be wrong. But just joined a different extracurricular activity where you were sort of looking at creating innovative side projects, you know, like little projects that you were doing with like lecturers on their research. And I think that helped me to understand some other applications and like facets of engineering that, you know, you don't really get from just a university course. But if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't be a thing. But I think even in careers, like we often talk to other people who are constantly like wondering, like, do I belong here? Is this really for me? Can I see myself doing this, like, you know, for long term? And you do have to kind of reconstruct why you're here, what you're doing, where you want to head. And every few years you go through that period. So I think it's very nice for you to let people know it's normal, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and completely ditch the career and become, you know, something completely different in that aspect.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lau, do you have anything to add?
No, I had a question, but you go.
I was gonna ask. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that's one of the things that I really think about when I try and get in front of people and talk about my journey is that what we generally showcase as part of this is people who are super successful forever and have been successful during high school to get great marks into good universities and then kill it there, and then they're always high performers. And that's not everyone. It's, as you said, Sohan, like there was a period in your life where you were like, oh, this is not for me. But if you'd had a story like this from someone who had gone through it, I guess one of those things is going, actually, it's not just me. And my journey was different. And like, I was a terrible student at university. I now lecture at the university. So, wow. I guess one of those things is that you have completely different priorities at different times and everyone's going through their own thing. And it's often really important to understand that you're not the only person. There are probably thousands of people that go through the same sort of thought process in their own little bubble, in their own little communities every time. And engineering is a very hard degree. So a lot of people don't necessarily feel great about what they're doing while they're doing it, because you're going through this thinking, he's like, I thought I nailed this, but I've got like 55% of this. Like, so yeah, aspects like that is really why I like to talk about this generally, is that I don't think I'm special, but I don't necessarily see that represented sometimes, which is why it's important to talk about.
This is so true. You know, this is your case, and your case is like you actually wanted to end up doing engineering. But when you said like, I thought I was going to do project management or something like that, like there's so many people that get into an engineering degree and that's what they look to get into. You know, it's such a like individual dependent journey. And sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves just because we see, you know, the traditional path of successful people, and we tend to sort of like compare or, you know, we just see the differences, and sometimes we use that as a limitation to believe in ourselves, which is really interesting. And I'm really happy that you did share that you weren't as good at university degree, because that's something that I went through. I wasn't really good in like numerical subjects, and I held that not against me, but it was like a big insecurity of mine. And even when I was like in the workforce, I was like, I don't know, I would always give like, you know, my calculations or whatever with that caveat of like, but I'm not really good at math. And I should have just been like, this is what I did at my best capacity, you know? So thanks for sharing that, because I can completely relate to that. And process engineering is incredibly hard. Like, come on, give yourself a break. Like chemistry and all that, in addition to physics.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything without, I guess, the specialization in some of the things. Like I remember going through and doing no prerequisite courses and then having to do a 4th-year electrical engineering course. And I was like, oh, I am going to not do very well at this. But it was like, oh, this is actually really important because it's about how you control the processes that you're designing. So yeah, there was all of those sorts of things going through.
You have an incredible journey, and I'm sort of going to change the subject unless you, Sohan, would like to comment anything on that. Yes, we have done our research on you, obviously. And yeah, we noticed that you have an incredible journey.
Super worrying.
Yes.
A lot of things going to get uncovered today.
We're not that good. We're not the FBI. But anyway, so yeah, we noticed that your journey, you do a lot of, I guess, advocacy for minorities. And we're curious to know what inspires you to be a voice for those that probably don't use theirs or don't really know they have one.
Yeah, I guess it probably comes from like a bunch of different areas that sort of have shaped me into what I'm doing. So I definitely grew up in a very progressive family. Like I know that I'm still shocked when I go back to the towns that I grew up in, and they still have views that were probably out of date in the 1940s. And I grew up in that town, and I didn't have those views, and my family didn't, and then some of the people that I didn't. So like definitely a part of that. And then I guess I'm a pretty strong believer in diversity of thought, and diversity of thought comes from diversity of experience, and diversity of experience comes from all different manner of things. And it can be when you have people of different disciplines in engineering coming together, even if they have the same journey to get there necessarily. It could be coming from people in like minority categories. It could be coming from all of those things. And just generally through my journey, I've definitely seen that diversity of thought provides a better outcome. Championing that, I think, is really important. And as I mentioned before, like I am extremely privileged in that I am a white male in a male-dominated industry, and come from a good educational background and a stable home environment and all of those things. And that allows me to be in rooms where decisions are made. And I've seen other people not be considered as part of that instead of myself, or things like that. So one of the things that I try and do is as I said, like pull people into those opportunities. I'm allowed in, so how can I wedge the door open for somebody else that I drag in? And I generally try and look for that diversity of thought and diversity of experience, and make sure that we're, I guess, representing who we're sort of serving generally when it comes to the stuff that I'm involved in, when it comes to like associations and industry bodies and things like that. And I guess particularly the one that I'm most proud of, and Sahan and I talked about this when we first chatted, was I'm the chair of Young Engineers National Committee. And for the last couple of years, we have been doing some stuff in sort of First Nations advocacy, because First Nations engineers come from a very diverse range of experiences. Everything that we do as engineers generally affects our First Nations people. So how can we sort of plan and advocate for those if we don't have someone that may be thinking with that background in the room with us? And it doesn't mean that they represent all First Nations people, and you can never have that, but someone who can provide, I guess, insights into those things. And I guess one of the things that made me think of that is that I have some people in my life where they made different choices to me because they weren't able to make the same choices. So I moved away from home quite far to study at university. They couldn't do that because they had to be there as a carer for their extended family. They couldn't leave the country that they were on because that's where they're connected to and that's where they need to stay because that's part of their identity. They weren't able to work full time because they were studying part time. So what effect does that have on career pathways and things like that? So one of the things that we did is we have a co-opted position. So it's not a voted on or elected position as part of that committee, that we've gone out and sought someone with a First Nations background to provide us with some of that journey and insight. And they still work on the same things that everybody else does in that committee, but the idea is that they're able to lend a perspective that allows us to think slightly differently as part of that. And that's one of the things that I'm really proud of.
And that is something to be incredibly proud of, because I don't think there's enough happening, in the on a committee level or, in the bigger rooms to make decisions and improve the workplace for First Nations people. I do want to try to understand what in young Steve made him so attuned to looking at this, diversity of thought and diversity in the rooms and being like, I want to lift them up. Do you think it came because obviously you had to travel really far from home to get to uni and you came from a rural school background? Do you think having that uniqueness in your childhood and your shaping led you to look at it and being more attuned to it in a way? Yeah,
probably. And it probably really comes from, I guess, the family that I grew up in and their thoughts as well that sort of shaped that. And it probably wasn't until much later when I had those opportunities that I thought about those things. But surprisingly, there was stuff that I didn't really know about until much later in my life that sort of made sense with some of the choices that I'd made. So, for instance, my grandfather, so I now live in the city where my father grew up and several generations before that, but I didn't live there as a child or grow up there. I've moved there now. But just down the road from me is some land that's owned by the local Aboriginal Land Council. And my grandfather was a councillor back a long time ago, before I was born. And he was the one who sort of championed that this piece of bushland needed to be cared for by the local Aboriginal people. And that was something before I was born, before whatever, and I didn't learn that sort of stuff until I'd moved here. So I was in my 20s probably, and I was like, oh, that fits with some of the stuff that I get involved in, and that sort of makes sense. But I guess it's probably that shaping of the thought and the way that your family comes together and the things that you're taught as part of that. And similarly, my father was involved in a lot of things when he was a teacher in really remote communities around particularly First Nations attendance at school. So there was lots of barriers to entry, things that you wouldn't think of potentially, like ID or birth certificates or things like that. A lot of the people in those rural communities, whether they're First Nations or not, that the nearest birth, deaths and marriages and hospital is 8 hours away. Some people have never been. Some people aren't on registers anywhere because they live quite remotely, and they're not until they go to school or until they go to get licenses or things like that they're like, oh, I don't have a birth certificate, I don't have those things. So I guess that being in my life and that perspective also, I guess, shaped some of my thoughts quite early as well.
I think that's so, so beautiful, because even just on the topics of when we talk to people, what shaped them into being engineers and that sort of thing, we tend to learn that a lot of it is learned behavior. And I think it's so underrated. People don't really talk about how much children learn just by seeing what is, portrayed around them. Not so much what you say, but more like what you do. So
yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the values that, your parents sort of install on you. It's like, okay. It's funny because I can relate to that so much. Mum is a social worker, and for example, she focuses on women rights, human rights, but with a lens of, gender focus. And the diversity and inclusion subject was pretty much talked about for as long as I can remember. So to me, that gave me a lot of insight that perhaps other people have no idea, don't really know, have never thought about. And it's not because they don't want to, it's just because they haven't really been exposed to, or because they haven't been taught that that's the way. So it's really interesting how that shapes us, and then how it's like we just, we choose to advocate and continue with that, I guess, legacy of them, which is really nice that you just found out about your grandpa. I'm really happy for you.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness, what a forward-thinking man, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah, like a very long time ago as well, in a like area that was predominantly like steel workers and coal miners and stuff like that are not known
Very
for being
backwards
progressive industries, particularly at the time. Yeah, it was kind of cool. So yeah.
That's really cool. I have a question, and this is probably, don't know. So I was wondering, what's the percentage of First Nation people in the workplace? Do they choose engineering at all? Do they consider entering? Because it would be another thing to promote.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess like I don't have all of those stats, and I don't know, but one of the things that I've noticed through my time, and I did some workshops at remote schools, is that people didn't know that this was a career. You be what you see, right? And realistically, there aren't a lot of engineers when you're in a town of 500 people, right? You are probably going to become the hairdresser or the mechanic or the whatever that you see around you in your local community, right? So I guess one of the things that I've really noticed, and what we're trying to do at EA and broader, is have opportunities to go into those schools, whatever those are, and showcase some of the things. And that is not just for First Nation students. It's also about particularly people from migrant backgrounds as well is super important, and women as well. Like, we're grossly underrepresented as an industry with gender diversity. So like having those programs that can be rolled out to schools, and it influences people who look like an engineer, but also people who don't. And I guess that crosses over between what we're trying to do in Western Sydney, which is 1,000 people classes, to potentially some really remote communities that are 500 people schools.
Yeah, that's right. I think I remember reading on the not latest, but the 2022 Engineers Australia report, and a lot of people, like, one of the findings was that a lot of people didn't really know what engineers were. And it's interesting that that's like the common denominator in this minority group that is First Nations. And it's sort of like very similar to women. Like, women don't really choose it because they don't know what engineers do. We have seen a really good, I guess, change especially in schools. We did a workshop once with like school girls, and they knew that scientists look like females as well, which was really refreshing. But also, we were like, oh my God, they know that we can be. So it was like shocking. But yeah, so it's interesting that, as you said, like, they just lack role models. And perhaps if we advocated or sold, I'm going to use the word sell, although engineers don't really like it, but if we sold what we did in a better way, or we promoted it and sold our people, as you said at the start of the podcast, we would be getting more people, and we wouldn't be having the problem that we have now, which is like, we don't have enough engineers to A, deliver the projects that we have right now, and B, to fill out the roles that are going to be available when the older people leave. So that's really interesting.
It's sounding more and more like you have to convince the board at EA to release a budget so we can make an engineering show. Steve, if you can pull some strings,
please get the approval.
This happen.
Yeah, I'll have a chat to Raj and Rom and see what we can do. Yeah, like one of the things that I'll give a shout out that is an amazing program, and I've been involved for a number of years, and a friend of mine's on the board as well, is the Indigenous Australian Engineering Summer School. That's been running for quite a long time. Bob Hawke was the patron for most of his life, since he was the PM, and they run summer schools over a week, where they come and interact with a variety of different organisations. And what's really stunning for me is that they have a graduation at the end of that week, and it's really cool. It's generally kids in year 10 and 11, maybe 9 to 12 sometimes, but generally 10, 11, and one of the house parents that they call them, so the sort of chaperones, was finishing up. It was his last year of being a chaperone, and he did his first summer school when he was like 15, and he's now in his mid to late 20s, and he was influenced by this school to now be an engineer and then continue on giving back as part of that. Some of their people that are involved both at the leadership level but also at these summer schools are amazing. And Sohan, you'll love that it's also done at UQ as well. So you
So good, because it sounds very similar to something I've heard at UQ before. It's called Spark Engineering or something. Yeah, and they do something similar where they have students coming from, I don't want to typecast any of the schools, but anyway, just certain public schools, and they come and they spend a week, and they get to, like, I'm not sure if they stay there, but like they learn about, engineering and different parts of it. And a lot of the people I was very fortunate enough to meet that inspired me to stick around in engineering went through that, and they say that made them want to become engineers. So I think having stuff like this, oh my God, if you can send us the link firstly, and secondly, like being involved in that, and yeah, people don't really understand the impact it can have. Just that one solid week of exposure can change someone's whole trajectory.
So I will show you something that would probably miss the podcast, but on top of my computer, I have a little crane.
So cute.
That crane was done for me and signed, as you can probably tell, that little scribble, by one of the students from the engineering summer school last year. So that now sits. So she came from a rural area, not too far from where I grew up, and wanted to be an engineer after going through the workshop that we held for them. So that sits on top of my blue tack to the top of my screen.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Really cute.
Never forget your roots.
In a clip, yeah.
It's a good reminder.
How can young engineers who want to give back be a part of these programs?
Yeah, sure. So I guess there are so many different ways, and it's all about what your level of comfort is and what the activities that you want to do. So if you want to be going into schools and talking to students, there are programs out there in your local area that do that. So Engineers Australia, for instance, run Discover Engineering is what they call it. So they hold, against like sort of a talk in a hall where they get a bunch of different engineers and they talk about their careers and where they've got to. They also do the Past a Bridge challenge, or whatever it's called, that you build like a bridge out of pasture and see whose is the best and can hold up the most and things like that. And that's a really great way of introducing people to engineering. There are these summer schools as well. So depending on what you're interested in, like I was someone who went to quite a few of these summer schools, and some of those are run by associations, and some of those are run by specialist areas like the Power of Engineering or We Aspire is two that run some really great programs. And then the other shout out that I would say is like Engineers Australia is great. I've been a member for a very, very long time. And one of the things that I like about that is that you can be a part of an organisation for your whole career in different ways. So when I joined, I was really focused on my technical discipline. So when I was younger, I was like, cool, I want to know about like my area of chemical engineering and what chemical engineers do and learn from other chemical engineers. So I was involved there. And then I ended up getting involved in a different part, and I was like, yeah, I want to be involved in other young engineers' lives. So I wanted to be involved in not just chemical engineers. I wanted to know about what people were doing in roads and transport and things like that that were interesting to them. And then I got involved from a management perspective, looking after sort of a division as part of that board. And now I sit as part of the shadow board, which is management of EA and our views for all 120,000 plus members and things like that. And I guess the other thing that's really resonating, and I guess I would love to take a small bit of credit for it through some of the stuff that we're doing, is that we're really talking about how engineering is for everyone, even if you're not an engineer, because the engineering team isn't just engineers. It's what we tag as paraprofessionals sometimes. So that's our drafters and our designers and our modelers and things like that, right? But it's also people that are not in that area at all. So one of the things that I'm also quite proud of is I built a very diverse team in the water strategy area at Arup. So we have someone who has a degree in English literature, someone who has it in mathematics, someone who has it in geography. So they aren't drafters and designers and modelers. They are people working on strategy pieces in the water industry as part of an engineering team that aren't traditional people as part of an engineering team. So one of the things that we're doing is I guess showcasing that engineering is for everyone, even if you are not an engineer. And there is an amazing quote from I think it was last year's awards, where the Professional Engineering Associate won an award, and he said, I'm not a professional engineer, I'm an engineering professional, because the category was professional engineer is someone who has an engineering degree, and then you're a technologist or an associate. And he said, I'm not a professional engineer, so not in that employment category, but he's an engineering professional. And I was like, that's a really great line, and stuck with me.
That's really cool. Again, I can resonate to that a lot because I feel like I just recently sort of like shifted. I was a designer. I was a drafter for a long time. And then I shifted my role into, marketing and business development. And it might not be the technical tools that I used to be around, but now I'm just looking at the business from a different perspective, and the technical knowledge that I've had in the past few years has really helped, but also, the skills of lateral thinking, strategy, as you said, sure. It definitely helps you approach or, see things differently. So it's really refreshing. As we were saying, it's such a diverse industry and there's so many job opportunities and people are willing to help always. So it's really good. I do have a question going back to the rural kids, because you show us that beautiful crane. Is that how you call it? Crane? Crane. Okay, sorry. I am not familiar with the word, but I became familiar today. So something that you would advise someone coming from a rural town, what is it like to, network, or how can they get any opportunities in the industry? What's the best way to approach the industry and the workforce? If you could share some of that, that would be really helpful for them.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things that I generally say to people is like, we should be taking every opportunity to figure out what we want to be doing. One thing for me was that because chemical engineering is so broad, I had sort of latched on to somewhere that I thought I felt comfortable and was like, yep, that's going to be me and I'm going to die doing that job and that's my career. Great. And it wasn't until I started to test some of those assumptions and try different things that I realized that actually, like, I think that's cool, but maybe this is a better fit for me, or this is different. One of the great ways to do that is to talk to people. So I know that can be super scary for a bunch of people, but generally people are pretty nice. And if they're not, just don't talk to them anymore. There will be tons of people out there willing to help you out, and particularly in different industries. And like, I'm very lucky to work in the water industry, where, generalizing, nobody gets in it for money or like fame or power. Everybody gets in it because they want to provide an essential service that helps their community and contribute to really important stuff like health and well-being, and the ability to access that essential service. Inherently, most people in the water industry are super nice and will go out of their way to help you out, whether that's a kid or someone later in their career, or someone making a pivot towards the end of their career. People will help out, and especially at the moment, because as you mentioned up front, like, we have more engineering projects than we're able to deliver with the workforce that we have. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet coming through. We didn't graduate as many people last year as we did the year before. So those enrollments have been decreasing. So it's not like we're going to see a change in the amount of workforce that we have in a couple of years, because those people who are now at university are going to enter the workforce. We're going to see some people enter, but it might not still be enough. We're still going to have to tap into all of the aspects that we can, people transitioning later in their career from different industries that might be on the downturn, or at the tail end, like coal, for example. Like, you have a bunch of really skilled people that have been doing like really highly technical work for a really long time, and there probably isn't the pipeline of projects for them that there once was. So how do we retrain people and get them into those things? And yeah, for everyone thinking about that, like, go out, have conversations, and test your assumptions as part of that is sort of my advice. Like, I'm here doing my job because I tested some of the assumptions that I had and was proved wrong, and made those changes to be able to do the work that I'm doing now.
Sorry, I am. Thank you. I was trying to unmute myself, but no, I'm a bit at a loss of words, to be very honest, because I think that is, testing your assumptions is not something people are generally comfortable with, to be very honest. And a lot of the times when people are coming from these backgrounds, they have family situations where people tell them, oh, don't try something different. Like, this is a tried and tested pathway. People are working, they're fine, they have this job, whether it's a hairdresser or whatever. And if you steer out the path, then you won't be successful. Like, who knows what's out there. So I think it's a great message to be sharing, especially from someone who's like made it, quote unquote, from the background that you're from and what you're doing right now. Like, hell, you've made it, like, so amazing.
Excellent role model. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, excellent role model. Exactly. So I just think that's just invaluable to be here.
And I also really like the fact that you said that if people aren't nice to you, like when you go and approach them, don't talk to them. Indeed. Like, seriously, because there's so many other people that are going to go and be so happy to share what they do. Just because, when we inspire others, we also get a kick out of it. And we're like, yes, I helped someone, sort of thing. Because that's just human nature. That's what I mean. Like, so I'm really happy that you shared that.
Unbiased opinion as a water professional. Yeah, I think we're so nice.
Yeah, we definitely are.
We are so...
So we've been talking about the pro bono stuff that you do, and also some of the activities that, some of the many hats you wear. Tell us a little bit about that pro bono work and some of the projects that you have been involved that really have, helped you gain perspective of, as you said, your privilege as well.
Yeah, sure. So I guess to detail some of the stuff, like I'm our incoming president. Probably by the time this airs, I will be that. So there you go.
Congratulations.
for New South Wales, for the AWA. I chair our Young Engineers National Committee, sit on our shadow board, as well as Congress and the Engineering Practice Advisory Committee for Engineers Australia. I sit on the advisory board of a charity that looks at wastewater treatment for textiles in Indonesia. And I also chair the Water Aid Committee in New South Wales. And
Can we do a time management skills podcast episode with you, because you seem to have them? Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, because I don't think I'm that great at time management. I just realized really early on in my life that I work better when my plate is full. So like when I have less things to do, I just fill whatever time I have with the things on my plate. And then if my plate is really, really full, I just become super efficient, and then I feel better for achieving lots of things. So yeah, I sort of learnt that, and that's what I've sort of stepped into, is that and I guess again, like the time in my life as well, is that I have some of this time to be able to give to these things. So I guess one of the things that really resonated with me is I guess that perspective piece is around Water Aid and the other charity that I mentioned, but particularly Water Aid, because I've been involved in Water Aid in many different guises since I first worked in the water industry. One of the things it's really cool to me is that I get to, I guess, provide skills and insights that I do every day and that I have to people that don't readily have access to those skills and insights. And that's really cool. So that's sort of why I got into Water Aid. And I guess that's really shifted the longer I've spent with that organisation to, I guess, that perspective piece. One of the really cool things that Water Aid in Australia does is that they solve problems by social change and the management of the root problem, rather than providing toilets and taps to people. The outcome might be a toilet and tap, right? But it's about solving, I guess, these social issues that we have. So, for instance, some of the work that we do in Timor-Leste is about providing toilets at school. However, the outcome of that is that women and girls are better educated and are able to contribute to society in a more meaningful way. Sometimes people think, how does a toilet link to that outcome? And I guess it's about hygiene, dignity, and the ability to be, I guess, involved in all aspects of life. So I didn't first understand how those two things sort of linked, but the way they link is that girls in Timor-Leste can't go to school while they're menstruating.
Yeah.
So they miss out on roughly a quarter of their education. And when you're missing out on a week a month, how are you catching up? Most of them aren't. Most of them are like, oh, well, I've missed stuff, so I'm not going to go. And then your household role changes. And even if you do, how do you do that with dignity when you don't have a space for you to change your hygiene and sanitation? How do you have that in a way that allows you to be part of a society when half of you are disadvantaged in that way? So that's a really big thing for me. The other, and I guess this is part of the whole WASH piece, is you have the water and then you have the sanitation and hygiene. And the water is also very similar. Like WASH is inherently a gendered issue. And it's a gendered issue because the sanitation and hygiene affects women more than men. So even when you don't have access to good sanitation, you still have a further barrier for women not being able to menstruate and give birth hygienically, and issues that might come from that. Then the flip side, you have water. Some of these programs, people have to travel hours to collect water. If you're doing that, then you're probably not holding a job or going to school. So generally becomes the women of the household's role. And if you're missing out on 3 or 4 hours of day of school, you can't really go out and get a job and contribute economically to a household. So you might as well go and do these other household things to contribute. And I guess that then becomes this cyclic issue that generally you have people who can't achieve that education, who can't go into that, who fall into these really unfortunate roles within the household dynamic where they aren't able to sort of do too much outside of that role, and that role is generational. And by providing a tap is great, but it also changes the hours per day that someone might be losing. It also might change the way that people are able to safely give birth, which was one thing that didn't really strike me, is that I didn't think about the hygiene associated with that and the mortality that comes with not being able to have clean instruments and a hygienic place to give birth and all of those sorts of things. So I guess that change and that flipping that has been something that really, really gives me perspective. I guess there's, again, something that I heard from one of our team that went over to Timor-Leste on a supporters trip earlier in the year. He said there's 3 ways to do projects, and I quote this now for some other work that I do, particularly development work, is that you can do projects to people, you can do projects for people, and you can do projects with people. And particularly this water aid model is that you do projects with people, because building a toilet or building a water treatment facility is actually no good if as soon as you leave and it's finished being built, can't be maintained or operated, or you've built this thing that nobody will use. That was one of the challenges that we faced in doing some work in India, is that we thought that having open defecation, build them some toilets. Well, actually, that's not the problem. The problem was that people wouldn't empty those toilets because that was seen as a low cost job, so that they would just fill up until they were used and then they wouldn't be able to be used again. And it was actually less of a social issue for them to have open defecation than it was to clean toilets. So I guess building a toilet is great, but if nobody uses it and it doesn't actually fit in what you're trying to do, and you don't do that project with the people, it's not as effective as it could be. And I guess that's really a perspective that I've brought back into the work that I do, particularly the work that I enjoy doing. I don't really like doing projects to or for people. They have a great place, right? Sometimes somebody just wants you to come in and solve a problem for you and give you them the answer. But that's not the stuff that really excites me. It's working with someone to get an answer. And generally the stuff that I work on is actually really technically easy. It's building a pipeline. It's little things like that. But the problem is that you can't put it through that koala habitat. You can't go through this land. You need to be able to stage this. You have delicate stakeholders, all of those sorts of things that come into doing project with people, rather than just going, we just do this thing, deliver this infrastructure, do this calculation and hand it over.
Yeah, holy moly. It's not exactly, but it's similar to if you're just fixing the front end issue, it's almost like you're chucking a band-aid on a problem that has so many, social perception undercurrents that are stopping it from being utilized in a way. So it's almost like fixing the root cause so that the outcome is completely different, which is the best policy to be doing in everything. I'm always an advocate for this
holistic approach. But also it's so amazing because you're working with people, but you're helping people who just are living life in different, with different, in different circumstances, or a completely different environment, to have quality of living. And the word that you used that I really, it really caught my attention was dignity. And when it comes to everything that we do, working for minorities or just, equity or equality around the world, we have the UN working for a long time with the SDGs and all that. is dignity. Is like helping people to live their life in a way, dignified way. Thank you so much, team. And it's that element. Is like that's actually, you know, human rights in a nutshell. Like you just deserve that. At least it's beautiful, and you should be proud of yourself. And also thank you so much for sharing your story and inspiring us to do a little bit of more pro bono or like humanitarian engineering work.
Anytime.
So I think I have the last question for you. And as we said, we went through your LinkedIn, we went through your files. No, I'm kidding. But we did a little bit of research, and we saw that something that really stood out to us is that you value vulnerability. And, you know, it's not something that is very common in our industry to be so open about, especially as we know, being a male, white male, that looks like an engineer. So what was the catalyst for you to sort of like become like that?
I guess to be vulnerable. It's absolutely something that I'm still working on. I got feedback in my last sort of appraisal that sometimes it's really important to, I guess, show the ups and the downs. So generally I would sort of be like, oh yeah, like that didn't go to plan, let's move on, and sort of compartmentalize some of that stuff. And when it's the ups, you'd be like, yeah, like great job everyone, you nailed it, like celebrate some of those sorts of things. And yeah, like, so it's still something I'm definitely working on. But I guess that's part of my personality. And one of the things that I've learned through my career is that I want to do stuff that's true to what I am as a person and the personality that I have. And like originally getting into the water industry was really about that. Like I finished up doing what I was doing in quite a great role because I was working on stuff in Mongolia and in Borneo, and I would come back to where I lived and I was like, great, like I've not impacted my local community in any way, or I haven't really had an impact in an area which I'm super proud of. So I guess that's exactly why I made that pivot in my career, because I wanted to do something that was more values aligned, that contributed positively to my local community. And I guess as I've progressed through my career, my local community has just got bigger and bigger. And it's not just the suburb that I live in or the town that I live in now, it's the state and it's broader. I guess, yeah, one of those things is I do really want to be vulnerable about some of those choices because that's my personality. And I want to work with people who are also like authentic about the way that they work, and I want to work on stuff that is contributing to meaningful outcomes. And by being open and vulnerable about those things, I think that's really a thing that's helped me throughout my career, by being authentic and being like, yes, like I can see that and want to work on those sorts of things. And that's been something that's, I guess, paid like dividends. So I've doubled down on that. So, but again, like it's still something that I guess I'm still working on around what that looks like and how that can influence people and things like that.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a really good job because this conversation was very, you know, I guess it wasn't surface level. Let's put it that way. We delve into a couple of things and you openly share it with us, and we really appreciate that. And thank you so much for giving us, you know, insights on your life, your work experience, and your family as well.
Very hard to wrap up all the amazing stuff you do in a short session, unfortunately.
I know, we wanted, as I said to you, we're coming back for you for like a time management one. I said that lightly because I know we haven't mastered that. You just said that, but it's it's incredible. So you must be doing something good in that department. Thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you for the work that you're doing to help reshape the industry as well. And I think it's going to be so inspiring for anyone listening that doesn't know this sort of stuff is out there or wants to get involved. I think it's a great sign for them to get started.
Yeah. If this doesn't motivate them to engineering, what does?
And they'll also know who to reach out to now. So if your inbox gets flooded.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely one of those nice people in water, and I'm not putting any of that in air quotes. But yeah, like I guess always happy to talk to anyone about some of these things. Like obviously I have a few things going on sometimes, but one of the things that does really bring me joy is being able to work with people. As you said, like give back as part of that. Like part of the reason that I do this is really selfish, is because I enjoy it and I get like joy out of doing it, which is sort of great. Thanks for
Thank
having
you so
me.
much.